Hello everyone and welcome to today's video on how to become a backend developer in 2023. Do you know friends that in the recent years, the field of web development has grown in popularity. With the websites gaining popularity, businesses have understood that in order to acquire more leads, they must have a strong online presence. As a result, they look for an exceptional individual who can design and develop the best backend infrastructure for the online apps using the cutting-edge technologies. Now, before we discuss more about it, do not forget to hit the subscribe button and click the bell icon. So let's discuss our agenda first. We are going to start our session with an introduction to what is exactly backend development. Moving ahead, we are going to discuss who is a backend developer. Then we are going to learn what are the skills required to become a backend developer. Moving ahead, we are going to also learn how to become a backend developer. And at the end, we are going to conclude our session with salary and career opportunities for a backend developer. So let's start with what is backend development. Backend development actually refers to the development of server-side logic that powers a website and apps from behind the scenes. If I elaborate it, it means that it is an area of web development that focuses on how a website or a web application works. It is what happens behind the scenes. And the same way like a restaurant chef and his or her staff handles all the orders without the customer sitting at their table seeing them. So instead of cooking food, though backend developers write codes that enable web browsers to communicate with databases and servers. And the primary role related with a backend developer is to ensure that the end users get the data or services that they requested without a glitch and on time. And such backend development requires a comprehensive set of programming skills and knowledge. That was exactly comprises what a backend development exactly is. Now let's move forward and study who is a backend developer. So the question is, who is a backend developer? A backend developer is a type of software developer who specializes in creating and maintaining the server side of a web applications. They work on the code and technologies that power the website or application, which the user doesn't directly interact with. Backend developers are actually responsible for creating the logic that allows the website or application to function and communicate with other systems. Backend developers typically work with databases, APIs, and the server-side programming languages such as Python, Ruby, PHP, and Java. They often work closely with the front-end developers responsible for creating the user-facing side of the application or website. Back-end developers need to understand the technology stack used by the organization, including the server architecture, networking, and databases. Some common tasks of a back-end developer include designing and developing APIs, creating and managing databases, implementing security features, and deploying the application to a production environment. They may also work on optimizing the performance of an application and debugging issues and integrating new features into an existing system. One of the key skills which basically required by a backend developer is problem solving. They need to be able to identify issues and develop effective solutions, often under tight deadlines. They must also have a solid understanding of data structures and algorithms, as well as the ability to write efficient code. Another important skill if I talk about a backend developer is collaboration. They must also work closely with other developers, product managers, and designers to ensure that the website or application is meeting the needs of the end user. Communication skills kind of also are very essential, as they may also need to explain the technical concepts to the non-technical stakeholders. A backend developer must also stay up to date with the latest trend and technologies in their field. This requires a commitment to lifelong learning, attending conferences, reading industry publications, and participating in online communities. In a summary, if I talk about who is a backend developer, is a crucial member of any web development team. They are responsible for creating the server-side code that powers the website or application, working closely with the other developers and ensuring that the application is secure, efficient, and scalable. Backend development requires a range of technical, interpersonal skills, and those who succeed in this field are often problem solvers who are committed to continuous learning and collaboration. I hope so you got an overview of who a backend developer exactly is. Now let's move forward and discuss the skills required to become a backend developer. So if I tell you about Backend developers are kind of in hot demand these days, and there are some essential skills that you will have to learn if you want to become one. But never fear that you ever peeked under the hood of your car to find a snuck of the backstage in the first-hand look what goes on behind the show. You would have the curiosity that drives the backend developer. With a little bit of effort and training, you may be able to use your natural inquisitiveness to build a rewarding career. But it ultimately depends on acquiring the essential backend development skill. And the first skill which I want to discuss is Python. If you are going to be a backend developer, then you need to develop your Python skills. While it has nothing to do with the snake that inspired its game, Python is one of the premier languages that is used in the development today. In a 2019 study conducted by Stack Overflow, deemed Python is the fastest growing major programming language in the world above. The second only is Rust likability ranking. A full of 41.7% of the report states that 90,000 of the respondents said that they use Python in 2020. So you can see, based on the past statistics, Python is hugely popular. The reason behind Python's popularity is kind of simple. It supports multiple programming styles and provides excellent data visualization. With Python, developers can use procedural, functional, and object-oriented programming approaches with equal ease. The language supports for expansive data libraries and makes use of visualization easy and development speedy. Plus, Python is relatively easy to run. The next language which I want you to learn is Java. First, let's get one thing out of the way. Java is not JavaScript. While the two have similar names and did during the Netscape era briefly intersect, but they are actually incredibly different. Simply, if I talk about Java, Java is actually a general-purpose programming language for application development, while JavaScript is applied primarily to incorporate animation and interactivity to the websites. The two do have similarities, and both can run on a browser or a server. For example, however, they are vastly different in their capabilities and execution. Java is primarily intended for backend development, a more robust system. Java is typically written in an integrated development environment before being compiled in bytecode or low-level code that can be read by the software interpreter, rather than the human developers. Whereas JavaScript, in contrast, can typically execute its original syntax via JavaScript engine. Generally, Java is capable of handling more robust programming tasks than its front-end counterpart. Java is an incredibly useful skill for backend developers, and it's a high-performance language that supports object-oriented programming and can run in any system that supports Java Virtual Machine. Now let's move on and let's discuss the next skill, that is PHP. PHP, or Hypertext Preprocessor, is one of the common and usable server-side languages in the development sector. Unlike Python or Java, PHP is a scripting language, which means that it interprets scripts, programming instruction at the runtime to automate routine processes or improve performance of an application. According to the statistics shared by Stack Overflow, over 20 million of the websites and applications have been developed via PHP. This is for a good reason, that PHP is an open source and has a gentle learning curve. And it is also kind of cost effective because most web hosting servers already support the language by default. As a bonus, it also offers a built-in support for the popular relational database MySQL. While PHP might not be a critical skill for backend developers, but if they know other major programming languages and having familiarity with it would certainly make an aspiring programmer more marketable. The next skill which I want to discuss is SQL. Technology might not be outdated easily, but SQL seems to be an exception in this rule. The structured query language has empowered the backend developers to access and manipulate the relational databases as needed. SQL allows programmers to insert and delete records easily, file queries against a database, and create new tables and store procedures in a database, and even establish permissions on those tables and procedures. If you ever need to deal with relational databases and if you are a backend developer, then without a doubt you will need to know SQL. Now let's move on and let's understand the next skill, which is Git. If you are looking for a widely used modern version control system to fit your needs, then Git is a great option. It is actively maintained and open source and created by the same founder of the Linux operating system. Each developer with a working copy of a code can easily access the full history of what changes has been made. making it easy to edit and restore the code. Among any backend developer skills, Git is one of the most high-performing, flexible, and secure. And finally, we have the trifecta, which is HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. If I talk about HTML, HTML is the most fundamental building block of the internet. It determines the structure of web pages when working in conjunction with other two languages. On the other hand, the language that determines how elements will be rendered on a web page and standardizes the display across browser, which is CSS. And finally, if I talk about JavaScript, it is a language which is mostly used in the scripting language for web pages, but can also be used in browser elements like Adobe Acrobat. So you got a brief idea what are the skills required to become a backend developer. Now let's move forward and understand how to become a backend developer. First of all, I would advise you to get an education, complete a bachelor's degree in computer science majors. Then you can move on to learn any of the backend programming languages which I have discussed prior below. Then you will also have to learn about hosting. You can choose AWS or Azure as that platform. Then you can learn about the frameworks, such as if you choose Java as a backend programming language, then Spring is a wonderful framework to work with the backend. Moving ahead, you will also have to learn about databases, which I have mentioned as SQL or MongoDB as per as your requirement. Then you have to also acquire certain additional skills known, such as you have to also understand the socket APIs and how to use the Postman and all those things like version control system. So those are the additional skills and tools required by an industry. After you have done all this thing, go for an internship as a backend developer in a good company. Gain some experience. And finally after that, build your portfolio and resume. Now finally, let's discuss the salary and the career opportunities. So now is the point to discuss the salary and the career opportunity for the backend developer. An entry-level backend developer with less than 1 year of experience can expect to earn an average total compensation which includes tips, bonus and overtime pay of around you can say 3.8 LPA. And up to with mid-level of experience which can range from 5 to 7 years, you can earn around 25 LPA, which sounds totally fantastic according to our today's scenario. So summing up, this was all for today's session. I hope so you would have got an idea how to become a backend developer in 2023.
Just a quick info guys. Intellipaat provides full stack web development course in collaboration with ENICT IIT Guwahati. The course link of which is given in the description below.